June 16, 1944, a hedgerow near Saint-Lô, Normandy, France. The air is thick, humid, heavy with the smell of damp earth, crushed clover, and cordite. German sniper, Oberjefreiter Klaus Richter, presses himself into the root-twisted base of an ancient hedgerow. This is not a simple field boundary, it is a fortress of vegetation. Millennia-old mound of dirt and stone, woven with dense roots and crowned with a tangled canopy of hawthorn and oak. Sunlight filters through in fractured, shifting patterns. He has been here for 6 hours, motionless. His body is a part of the terrain. His Carabiner 98K rifle, fitted with a high-quality 4XZF-39 scope, rests on a small, packed earth-firing step he carved himself. The field before him is a kill zone, a perfect, deadly lane. He hears them before he sees them, the crunch of gravel, the low, guttural whispers of American infantry. They are moving cautiously, using the cover of the opposite hedgerow. They know he is here, or someone is. He selects his target, a young lieutenant, pointing, exposing his shoulder and head for a fatal second. Richter takes the slack out of the trigger. The world narrows to the crosshair. Crack. The shot is his, but the sound is wrong. It's not the long, rolling report of a Springfield or the familiar report of a standard Garand. It's sharper, more defined, and it came from the wrong direction. The lieutenant drops, but from the upper canopy of a hedgerow 50 meters to Richter's left. A brief, almost imperceptible glint of glass catches the sun. Before Richter can process this, a second shot rings out, faster than any bolt-action rifle could possibly be cycled. The man next to the fallen lieutenant crumples. A semi-automatic, scoped. The Americans have no such weapon. His intelligence briefings said nothing of this. A cold knot of understanding tightens in his stomach. The rules of this terrible, intimate war within the hedgerows have just changed. The hunter has become the hunted. The invasion of Normandy on June 6, 1944, was a masterpiece of logistics and audacity. But the success on the beaches, Omaha, Utah gold, Juno sword, was merely the opening gambit. Beyond the sandy stretches lay the Bocage, a landscape that Allied planners had tragically underestimated. For centuries, Norman farmers had divided their land into small, irregular fields. Each was enclosed by an earthen berm known as a bank. These banks, often 4 to 5 feet high and just as thick, were reinforced with the tangled roots of trees and impenetrable shrubs like blackthorn and bramble. The sunken lanes that ran between them were natural defiles perfect for ambush. From the air, it resembled a vast, lumpy quilt. On the ground, it was a claustrophobic, three-dimensional maze. For the advancing American, British, and Canadian forces, the Bocage was a tactical nightmare. It nullified their greatest advantages: mobility, artillery superiority, and close air support. Tanks, the spearhead of the blitzkrieg, became death traps. A Sherman cresting a hedgerow exposed its thin underside to Panzerfausts and anti-tank guns. Hidden mere yards away, fields of fire were reduced to 10 or 20 meters. Command and control broke down to the squad and fireteam level. Every corner, every gap in the foliage could conceal a machine gun nest, a squad of fanatical Hitler Youth, or a single patient sniper. The German defenders, primarily the battle-hardened veterans of the 352nd Infantry Division and the fanatical paratroopers of the 3rd and 5th Fallschirmjäger Divisions, were masters of this terrain. They used the Bocage not as a barrier, but as a force multiplier. They constructed mutually supporting strongpoints with interlocking fields of fire. They dug tunnels and firing ports into the base of the hedgerows, making them virtually invisible until they opened fire. They used mouse-holing techniques, moving unseen from field to field to outflank and surround advancing Allied units. The advance, measured in yards, became a bloody, exhausting slog. The U.S. 29th Infantry Division, for instance, suffered over 4,000 casualties in the first 2 weeks of fighting inland from Omaha Beach, much of it in this green hell. Into this brutal close-quarters battle, both sides committed their most specialized marksmen. The Germans, with a long-standing tradition of precision shooting, fielded snipers who were often hunters or foresters in civilian life. They were experts in camouflage, fieldcraft, and patience. Their standard rifle, the Mauser Carabiner 98K, was a superb, accurate, and reliable bolt-action weapon when fitted with a telescopic sight. The 1.5 XZF-41 for designated marksmen, or the more powerful 4 XZF-39 for true snipers. It was a deadly tool in the confined spaces of the Bocage, where engagements were rarely beyond 100 meters. Its limitations: a slow rate of fire and the need to break The shooter's aim to cycle the bolt were less pronounced. A single, well-aimed shot from a concealed position could halt an entire American platoon for hours. The American infantrymen, armed with the semi-automatic M1 Garand, had a significant volume of fire advantage in a straight-up firefight, but against a hidden sniper, the greatest battle implement ever devised, as Patton called it, was of little use if you couldn't locate the target. The U.S. Army, however, had recognized a critical gap in its arsenal. The fight for the hedgerows was about to force a new, specialized weapon into the fray, one that would challenge the German snipers' hard-won dominance. The United States entered World War II with a significant deficit in sniper doctrine and technology. The heroic but isolated feats of great war snipers like Alvin York were distant memory. The interwar period had seen a focus on massed, rapid rifle fire from the M1 Garand, a philosophy that left little room for specialized precision weapons. While the M1903A4 Springfield, a modified version of the older bolt-action rifle fitted with a Weaver MB scope, designated the M73B1 by the Army, had been hastily fielded after the landings in North Africa revealed the need. It was a stopgap solution. The M1903A4 had critical flaws. The scope was mounted directly over the bolt, preventing the use of stripper clips and forcing the sniper to load single rounds, a slow and cumbersome process. The bolt handle, unmodified, would often strike the scope. Housing in the close range, rapid engagement environment of the hedgerows, a bolt-action sniper rifle with a slow reload was a severe liability. An American sniper who missed with his first shot or who needed to engage multiple targets was at a distinct disadvantage against German automatic weapons and mortars that would immediately target his position. The solution was obvious, a scoped version of the standard-issue M1 Garand, but the path to that solution was fraught with engineering challenges. The M1 Garand was a gas-operated semi-automatic rifle that fed from an 8-round en-bloc clip, which was ejected forcefully upwards with a distinctive ping when the last round was fired. How could a telescopic sight be mounted without interfering with this loading and ejection system? The answer came from the Springfield Armory's chief engineer, John C. Garand himself. The initial design, standardized as the M1E7, featured a commercial Weaver 330 scope. Later designated the M81 with crosshairs or M82 with a tapered post. The key innovation was the mount. It was offset to the left of the receiver, allowing the clip to be loaded from the top and the spent clips to eject unimpeded. This scout scope configuration required the sniper to use his non-dominant eye for a full field of view, technique that took training to master, but it preserved the Garand's legendary rate of fire. After extensive testing, the rifle was type classified as the U.S. rifle, caliber .30 M1C. On June 21, 1944, a mere 2 weeks after D-Day, as the hedgerow fighting was reaching its peak of ferocity, the first of these new weapons began arriving in Normandy in late June and early July 1944. They were not issued to every infantryman, or even to every unit. They were carefully distributed to selected marksmen with infantry regiments, often 1 or 2 per company. These men were not always formally trained snipers. Many were simply soldiers who had demonstrated exceptional shooting skill and basic training. They were given a brief familiarization with the new rifle and its unique sight and then sent into the labyrinth of the Bocage. The stage was set for a brutal, unplanned experiment. The German sniper, a master of fieldcraft in the bolt-action rifle, was the entrenched master of this domain. The American, armed with a revolutionary semi-automatic sniper rifle and raw courage, was the challenger. Their confrontation would be swift, violent, and decisive, a microcosm of the larger clash between old-world military tradition and new-world industrial ingenuity. The hedgerows were about to become a proving ground that would redefine the very nature of military sniping. To the German sniper in Normandy, the Bocage was not an obstacle, it was a weapon. He was often an Oberjäger or Jeffrader, selected for his cool nerve and pre-war experience as a hunter or forester. His training emphasized absolute patience, meticulous camouflage, and what the Germans called Fingerspitzengefühl, a fingertip feeling for the battlefield. He would infiltrate positions hours before dawn, often working alone or with a spotter who also served as a security element. His ghillie suit, if he had one, was augmented with local foliage, oak leaves, ferns, branches, making him indistinguishable from the hedgerow itself. He favored high positions within the Dense canopy tree sniping, which gave him a superb vantage point, or he would create a schneise, a firing lane through the base of a hedgerow, concealed by camouflaged burlap screen. His primary weapon was the K98K with a ZF-39 scope. Robust and accurate system, his doctrine was one of disruption, a single, well-placed shot could decapitate an enemy unit by killing its leader, silence a machine gun crew, or simply instill a paralyzing fear that slowed the American advance to a crawl. He was a psychological force multiplier, and in the first weeks after D-Day, he held a terrifying ascendancy. The U.S. M1C sniper rifle was more than just a Garand with a scope. It was a system that fundamentally altered the sniper's tactical options. The heart of its advantage was its semi-automatic action, where a German sniper with his K98K had to break his cheek, weld, move his firing hand, cycle the bolt, and reacquire his sight picture after every shot. The American M1C shooter simply kept his eye on the target and squeezed the trigger again in a close-range environment where a second target might present itself. Instantly, this was a revolutionary capability. The 8-round en-bloc clip, while still limitation compared to a detachable box magazine, provided more than enough firepower for most engagements without immediate reloading. The offset M81-M82 scope, while non-traditional, was clear and effective at the short to medium ranges of Bocage. The rifle fired the same powerful .3006 cartridge as the standard M1, ensuring lethal effect with any hit. It was not a perfect weapon. The mount could loosen under recoil and the scope was vulnerable to damage, but its core innovation was its rate of aimed fire. It transformed the sniper from a deliberate single-shot marksman into a rapid response precision killer. The American soldier who first wielded the M1C was a different breed from his German counterpart. He was less a specialized hunter and more a highly trained infantryman. With a natural aptitude for shooting, many were farm boys who had grown up with rifles, their skills honed in pre-war civilian life. They lacked the formal, extensive sniper training of the Germans, but they possessed immense practicality and initiative. Thrust into the hedgerows with this new weapon, they had to learn their craft through brutal, immediate experience. They quickly adopted German tactics, learning to value concealment and patience, but the M1C allowed them to add a new, aggressive tactic to their repertoire: suppression and rapid engagement. An American sniper could pin down a German machine gun nest with well-aimed shots at its firing port, or he could engage multiple enemy soldiers revealed by a single mortar blast. He often worked in loose coordination with his squad or platoon, using their base of fire to maneuver into a killing position. He was not a lone wolf, but a force enabler for his unit. The M1C was his great equalizer, and he learned to wield it with a devastating effectiveness that began to erode the German sniper's psychological edge. Beyond the human and technological combatants, the terrain itself was the ultimate arbiter of the sniper duel. The Bocage was a three-dimensional chessboard of almost infinite complexity. Its defining characteristic was the limitation of sight. Fields of view were rarely more than 100 meters, and often as short as 20. This compressed engagement range worked to the advantage of the scoped rifle, as even the modest 2.5x magnification of the M81-82 scopes was sufficient for precise shot placement. Density of the vegetation created a cacophony of echoes, making it exceptionally difficult to pinpoint the origin of a shot. A sniper could fire from one hedgerow, and the sound would seem to come from three others. The terrain also offered an abundance of firing positions, not just in trees and at the bases of hedgerows, but within the hedgerows themselves. Snipers would burrow into the vegetation, creating hidden nests that were invisible from more than a few feet away. This environment demanded a new kind of marksmanship, snap shooting, rapid target acquisition, and an intimate understanding of how to use microterrain for concealment and escape. The hedgerow did not choose a side. It favored the soldier, regardless of nationality, who best understood and respected its deadly intricacies. The sniper's most potent weapon was not his rifle, but the fear he instilled in the Bocage. This psychological warfare reached a fever pitch. For the average infantryman, movement became a nerve-shredding ordeal. The knowledge that an invisible marksman could be watching from any direction induced a condition the troops called Bocage fever, a state of hypervigilance bordering on paralysis. A single sniper shot could halt a company's advance for an entire day, as troops painstakingly cleared hedgerow after hedgerow, a process known as the slow, sure, deadly game of Hedgerow fighting, the crack of a bullet passing nearby, and the subsequent thump of. The rifle report became the soundtrack to the Normandy campaign, the German sniper. With his reputation for patience and cruelty was a spectral terror, the introduction of. The M1C began to turn this psychological war, the distinctive faster crack-crack of a semi-automatic sniper rifle in the hands of an American marksman, sent a different message to both sides. To the GIs, it was the sound of a guardian angel, a specialist on their side who could answer the German threat in kind. To the Germans, it was the sound of a shocking and unforeseen technological parody, a reminder that their sanctuary within the hedgerows was no longer secure. The duel in the hedgerows was a live-fire laboratory that spurred immediate adaptation. The Germans, upon capturing their first M1C rifles, were reportedly shocked by its design and capabilities. They quickly learned to identify its unique report and the increased threat it posed. This forced a change in their own tactics, the luxury of taking a second shot from the same position became far more dangerous, as the American sniper could return fire with terrifying speed. German snipers were compelled to become even more mobile, shifting positions after a single shot, a tactic that reduced their effective rate of fire and increased their exposure. On the American side, the initial deployment of the M1C revealed its shortcomings. The offset scope was awkward for some shooters, and the mounting system was a weak point. Feedback from the field led to rapid modifications and the development of the improved M1D model, which used a different, more secure mount, though it arrived too late for widespread use in Normandy. This constant, brutal feedback loop, a technological and tactical tango between two determined enemies, refined the art of sniping under fire and proved that no weapon, no matter how advanced, is a substitute for the cunning of the soldier who wields it. The climactic shift in the hedgerow sniper war was not a single dramatic battle, but a cumulative process that reached its zenith during the brutal American push towards the strategic crossroads of St. Lo in mid-July 1944. The city, a key transportation hub, was the immediate objective of the US V and XIX Corps. The fighting to reach it was some of the most costly of the entire campaign, a grueling yard-by-yard advance through labyrinth defended by elite German paratroopers. It was here, in the shattered fields and bullet-scarred hedgerows outside villages like La Luzerne and Martinville Ridge, that the M1C truly came into its own. The American military, stymied for weeks, had also been adapting at a larger tactical level. They developed new combined arms tactics for the Bocage, Rhino tanks Shermans fitted with hedgerow-cutting tines made from salvaged German beach obstacles, began to punch holes through the earthen banks, allowing infantry to pour through without being funneled into pre-sighted kill zones. This increased the tempo of the advance and disrupted German defensive plans. Within this new, more fluid context, the American sniper teams became a critical component of the assault. No longer purely reactive, they were used proactively to spearhead advances. A typical engagement began to unfold with a new, deadly rhythm. An American infantry platoon would secure a hedgerow, laying down a base of fire. Two-man sniper team, often an M1C shooter and an observer with an M1 Garand or a Thompson submachine gun, would then use the covering fire to infiltrate forward, either along a flank or through a rhino-cut gap. Spotting a German position, a machine gun nest in a farmhouse window, a mortar team in a sunken lane, or an enemy sniper in a tree line, the M1C operator would engage. The first shot would strike its target, the resulting confusion among the German defenders ducking for cover, searching for the source of the fire, would create fleeting opportunities. The semi-automatic capability of the M1C allowed the American marksman to exploit these moments fully. A second shot could take out the German NCO directing the defense. A third could target the machine gunner who moved to replace his fallen comrade. This rapid, suppressive precision fire had a devastating effect. It could neutralize a key strongpoint in minutes, an operation that might have taken hours and cost dozens of casualties using conventional infantry assaults. The psychological impact was even greater. The German defenders, accustomed to the predictable cadence of bolt action, sniper fire, found themselves under a hail of accurate shots that seemed to come from an entire squad of expert marksmen. The myth of the lone, invulnerable German sniper began to crumble under the sustained, rapid fire of the M1C. The turning point is best illustrated by the changing fate of the German tree snipers. In The early weeks these marksmen, perched high in the dense canopy of the hedgerows, had been a scourge. Their elevated position made them nearly invisible and gave them a commanding view, but the M1C, in the hands of a trained and adaptive American soldier, proved to be the perfect counter. The process became almost procedural. A unit would be pinned down by fire from a tree. The source was difficult to locate. A single puff of smoke, a slight movement, glint of glass. But now, instead of blindly spraying the foliage with automatic weapons or calling in a time-consuming mortar barrage, the platoon leader could task his M1C marksman. The American sniper and his spotter would begin a systematic search, using their scopes to scan the canopy branch by branch. The spotter might use a distraction, a thrown rock, a burst of fire from another position to provoke a reaction. Once the German sniper was located, the M1C shooter had a decisive advantage. His first shot would rip through the leaves. If it missed, the German sniper would instinctively duck or shift. The sound and muzzle flash of the American rifle, however, were still difficult to pinpoint from a high, enclosed position. As the German sniper tried to reacquire his target, he had to expose himself again, the American never having left. His scope simply adjusted his aim and fired a second shot, and a third if necessary. This rapid follow-up shot capability was the key. A German sniper with a K98K, after firing and cycling his bolt, would often find a return shot already on its way before he could even realign his own sights. The M1C turned the tables on the hunter in the tree. The high ground became a death trap. Numerous after-action reports from late July 1944 note a marked decrease in effective German tree sniping, a direct result of the M1C's deployment. By the time the U.S. 29th and 35th Infantry Divisions fought their way into the ruins of St. Lo on July 18, 1944, a subtle but critical shift had occurred in the microbattles. Within the larger campaign, the American infantryman, while still fearing the sniper bullet, now had a tangible, organic answer to it within his own unit, the M1C sniper. Teams had evolved from a novel asset into an integrated, essential part of the American combined arms team in close country. They had not eliminated the German sniper threat, but they had broken its psychological stranglehold and achieved a hard-fought technological and tactical parity. The hedgerows, once a German sanctuary, were now contested killing ground where American innovation had finally matched German fieldcraft. The capture of St. Lo on July 18, 1944, marked the effective end of the pure hedgerow fighting. The subsequent Operation Cobra, launched on July 25, saw the American breakout into the more open country south of the Bocage, a brutal campaign of a different character. The sniper duel in the hedgerows, however, left a lasting and quantifiable impact. The human cost of the Battle of the Hedgerows was staggering. In the 7 weeks from D-Day to the end of July, the U.S. First Army suffered over 40,000 casualties in the Normandy campaign, the vast majority in the grinding advance through the Bocage. While it is impossible to disaggregate how many of these were caused specifically by snipers, contemporary unit reports and memoirs consistently cite snipers as one of the top 3 causes of casualties, alongside mortars and machine guns. The psychological toll, incalculable but very real, contributed to the high rates of combat fatigue. For the Germans, the losses were equally severe and ultimately fatal. The German 7th Army and Panzer Group West were bled white in the defense of Normandy. Their elite infantry, the paratroopers, and the 352nd Division suffered catastrophic casualties. The constant pressure applied by all American arms, including the increasingly effective M1C sniper teams, meant that experienced German snipers, who were difficult to replace, were steadily eliminated. A report from the U.S. 2nd Infantry Division noted that by late July, the quality and frequency of German sniper fire had noticeably declined, becoming less expert and more desperate. The M1C itself had proven its worth, while only about 8,000 M1Cs were produced by the end of the war compared to over 28,000 of the later M1D. Their impact in Normandy was disproportionate. They provided a crucial confidence boost to the infantry and delivered a tangible tactical advantage in countless small unit actions. The weapon was not without its critics. The offset scope and mounting issues were legitimate concerns, but its core virtue, the semi-automatic action, was never in doubt. Lessons learned in the hedgerows directly influenced the ongoing development of U.S. sniper equipment and doctrine. The M1C and M1D would go on to see service Through the Korean War, the direct descendants of that desperate summer in Normandy. Bocage itself was a victor in its own right, having inflicted a terrible delay on the Allied advance. The 2-month stalemate allowed the Germans to reinforce their lines, contributing to the prolonged and bloody nature of the Normandy campaign. It was a harsh lesson in the power of terrain, a lesson that would be remembered in the forests of the Huachin and the snows of the Ardennes, yet to come. The aftermath of the Hedgerows sniper war extended far beyond the body counts, and the capture of a French town, it represented a fundamental shift in American military philosophy. The U.S. Army, which had entered the war with a distinct lack of emphasis on sniping, was now a believer. The success of the M1C in Normandy provided irrefutable evidence for the value of a dedicated, semi-automatic sniper system organic to the infantry company. This led to a formalization of sniper training, while still ad hoc in the European theater. Lessons from the M1C's deployment were compiled and analyzed. In the Pacific, the U.S. Marine Corps had already established a more robust sniper program, but the Army was now catching up. The demand for the M1C and M1D rifles increased, and efforts were made to standardize mounts and optics. The era of the sniper as a specialized, valued asset rather than just a good shot with a special rifle had begun in earnest for the U.S. Army. For the Germans, the encounter with the M1C was a stark lesson in Allied industrial and tactical adaptability. They had encountered a problem, the Bocage, and turned it into a defensive strength. The Allies had encountered the same problem and developed a suite of solutions, from the crude but effective Rhino tank to the technologically sophisticated M1C. The German after-action reports that made their way up the chain of command would have noted this new American capability, but by mid-1944, the German war machine was losing the capacity for a meaningful counterresponse. They continued to rely on their excellent but technologically static K-98K system until the end of the war. Perhaps the most enduring legacy lies in the annals of weapon development. The M1 Garand platform's successful adaptation into a sniper rifle cemented its legendary status. It demonstrated the profound tactical advantage of a semi-automatic sniper weapon system SAS decades before the term became common. The direct lineage from the M1C can be traced to the M21 and M110 SAS of later conflicts, all embodying the same principle first proven in the Hedgerows, that rapid, accurate follow-up shots are a decisive factor in modern marksmanship. The duel in the Hedgerows, therefore, was more than a historical footnote. It was a crucible. It tested men, weapons, and ideas under the most extreme conditions. The outcome validated a new technology, revolutionized a tactical doctrine, and forever changed the way the U.S. military would view the solitary marksman on the battlefield. The crack-crack of the M1C echoing through the Norman lanes was the sound of an old dogma dying and a new one being born. The story of the M1C in the Hedgerows of Normandy is a microcosm of the Second World War itself, a clash of industrial might, human resilience, and the relentless adaptation of tactics to the unforgiving reality of combat. It reminds us that grand strategy ultimately devolves to the individual soldier in a field and the tool in his hands. The German sniper, a master of his environment and his craft, represented an ancient form of warfare, the patient hunter. The American with his M1C represented the new, the rapid industrial problem solver. This was not a story of one technology rendering another obsolete, but of a balance being brutally redressed. The M1C did not make the American sniper superior, it made him equal. It gave him a fighting chance in a duel that had been, until its arrival, overwhelmingly one-sided. In doing so, it saved countless lives, not by preventing death, but by enabling movement, by breaking stalemates, and by returning a sense of agency to the infantryman trapped in a green maze. The legacy of those summer days in 1944 is etched into the DNA of every modern sniper rifle. It is a legacy written in the cool patience of the hunter, the sharp report Garand, and the silent, enduring truth of the Hedgerows, that in war the advantage goes not always to the strong nor the swift, but to those who can best see, adapt, and overcome.